Hey, kia ora, Markie here with shaky handheld camera, and again a little bit more grizzled than usual because I've been down on the beach, and the beach down here is all covered in black volcanic sand, and I am covered in black volcanic sand. It gets everywhere, and you know, when you empty out your boots, there's like tons of it in there that falls out. Looking even more grizzled because of that. I'm also recovering from a double whammy of kiwi viruses, so extra grizzled for a number of reasons. So Merry Christmas. I want to talk about Christmas in a kind of wider context, and I kind of realised I didn't really think about this until this morning, that actually I have done quite a few videos now on different traditional or seasonal festivals, feasts, celebrations, call them what you will. I've done one on Bonfire Night, I've done one on New Year's Eve, I've done one on Halloween. So I have an interest in this, and also I think it's something that is skewed, something about how our calendar is. And the cycles of nature, and you know, the increase and fading of light, it doesn't quite work. I struggle a little bit to put that into words because I've got dyscalculia, and things like calendars and stuff are always a bit of a nightmare for me. But maybe we'll talk about that a bit more another time. Christmas. I want to focus on Christmas now. It's approaching Christmas. I think it's the first day of December today, and saw my first public Christmas tree, outdoor Christmas tree, which is featured in the thumbnail of this photo. And since moving to Aotearoa, New Zealand, Christmas just has had no meaning for me whatsoever. Because, as I said, I've just been to the beach. It's the first time really this year I've been able to you know, sit in warm sun and kind of fry. And it's starting to approach Christmas, and everyone's talking about Christmas, and it's doing my head in. You know, really strange. So we'll come back onto that in a little while, because that kind of you know, fits with some of these thoughts that I have on cycles, and how the calendar, and you know, how our body our body clocks, if you like, or our body calendars kind of fit with all that stuff. So Christmas, okay, so every time this time of year, Christians start to say, you're forgetting the true meaning of Christmas. And what I say to the Christians who say you're forgetting the true meaning of Christmas is, I say exactly the same to them. You're forgetting the true meaning of Christmas, because Christmas as a Christian festival celebrating the birth of Christ is, in the scheme of things, is a relatively recent affair. Okay, and Christ wasn't born at Christmas, or we don't think he was. And it was an absolutely brilliant idea by the early church to celebrate the birth of Christ at this time of year, because the winter solstice is the point where it's been getting darker and darker and darker, and then that suddenly reaches a point where it changes and gets lighter and lighter and lighter. And as the sun gets lighter and lighter, it's like the rebirth or the birth of the sun, the sun. So the early Christian church kind of put the birth of Christ with the birth of the sun. The birth of the sun, son, with the birth of the sun, sun. Brilliant. You know, I think that's a really good time to make the feast of Christmas. But that's not, you know, that was that's not a kind of, that was a choice. Okay, that's not kind of when Christ was born. You know, it's not like that's when he was born and then we're marking it. So the true meaning of Christmas isn't really about the birth of Christ at all. It goes back much further, and because there's always been a feast. In the Northern Hemisphere, there's always been a feast at this time of year. There's been the Romans called it Saturnalia, the Norse people called it Yule, and it's around about the time of the winter solstice. Strictly speaking, the 21st of December is the solstice, but around there. So, and different countries in Europe can actually celebrate Christmas at slightly different times. Some kind of European countries don't give out the presents and do that kind of thing on the 25th. They do it on other days. So it's a season. But essentially, the thing that links everything together is the winter solstice, and is the fact that that is the darkest point. Okay, so that is the time when you have a feast. What a perfect time for a feast, when it's dark, because you're feeling miserable. People are feeling miserable when it's dark. So although these pre-Christian feasts were also religious, so Saturnalia was obviously a celebration of the god Saturn, the Roman god Saturn. And these things all had a religious significance. I think so. You have to kind of look at it in this kind of context, really. So for Christians to say you're forgetting the true meaning of Christmas, well, actually, that's kind of, you hijacked it. I don't mind the fact that you hijacked it. It was a very good idea, but it's a bit like, I don't know, somebody kind of stealing your idea and then saying it was theirs. Okay, so they copied it from Saturnalia and Yule and all those other things. So what are you saying then, Markie? Are you saying then that the true meaning of Christmas is pagan? Well, I would say that it belongs equally to pagans as it does to Christians. And there are other faith traditions have their celebrations at this time of year. It belongs equally to them. But I would go even further, and I would say that this feast day is more psychological than it is sacred. I think it's a very human. I think it's actually more of a humanistic thing, that actually at this time of year, when it starts to get dark, that's the time when people want to get together, tell stories, have big fires, share gifts, eat a little more, drink a little more, because you've got to raise your spirits. And the interesting thing is, it's all, like I say, everything's got kind of cockeyed. So all the Christmas cards and Christmas imagery is all to do with snow. Now, certainly in the UK, where I come from, it's very, very rare for it to snow in December. And it's not actually usually that cold in December. It doesn't really get cold. In February is the really cold time. So that's the time that's associated with snow. So the real meaning of Christmas, I would say, is actually it's the need to rally your spirits. Think about people with seasonal affective disorder. The lack of daylight going into that dark time is really kind of difficult, and it's people getting together and buoying up their spirits, preparing for the colder times ahead, fattening yourselves up for February, for when the snows do come, and for preparing for those times, really. So when people came to the southern hemisphere, when my imperialist ancestors started to take over the rest of the world, they kind of crazily kind of imposed the same calendar on the southern hemisphere. So we're celebrating Christmas, and people are having kind of there's lots of kind of snowy images and Christmas decorations with snowy stuff on down here where it's getting really warm, and it's insane. So, and actually in midwinter down in New Zealand, it's actually quite cold. So I actually had a Christmas dinner on the 21st of June, and it felt right. Okay, so what I think our imperialist Christian ancestors should have done is taken a leaf out of the modern neo-pagan book and reversed everything. So what a lot of neo-pagans do. So neo-paganism has this wonderful model called the cycle of the year. So I think it's 8 seasonal festivals. And they all mark a very real turning point in nature. And when I say nature, that could be in terms of daylight, so it includes the solstices, and things like harvest, and traditionally things like the first frost. So Halloween, I didn't say that in my Halloween video, but Halloween, traditional Samhain as it used to be called, was celebrated at the time of the first frost. So they have this wheel of the year with these festivals on that all have this beautiful kind of symmetry, and they all kind of work beautifully together and fit with the real calendar, and go really well. So what you can do when you go to the southern hemisphere, you can just reverse it. So you've got things that are actually kind of opposites. So, for example, you've got the old Celtic Fire Festival of Beltane, which was later kind of became May Day. So that's where kind of maypoles and all those kinds of things came in. Traditionally, that was when the first, I think it was when the hawthorn first blossomed. That was when it would be celebrated. So it's kind of really, the people call it the birth of spring, but really it's the birth of summer. And May Day is all about kind of fertility, sex. That's what maypoles are. You know, the maypole that goes into the ground. You know, that's all about kind of fertility. It's sort of very, very kind of virile, sexual kind of time of year. All the thumping of, you know, stomping on the ground, and the Morris dancing where you clack the sticks together. It's all very kind of, you know, about kind of raising testosterone and, you know, kind of creating that kind of fiery energy for rebirth. That sits at the opposite time of year to Samhain, which was Halloween, which is about going into, you know, when you first start going into darkness, when the night starts to get darker, and that's all about death and the ancestors. So the cycle of the year, or the wheel of the year, is also mirrors human life. So you have kind of birth in there, you have conception, you have death, you have puberty. Every kind of stage of the human life cycle is kind of mirrored by a festival. So there's a very, you know, very strong. There's a lot in there really that anchors us into our environment, which is, I think, what we need more than ever, because we feel isolated. You know, it's more difficult to destroy, I think, your planet and the world if you feel disconnected from it. If you feel very connected to the cycles of nature and you feel more part of it, you're less likely to do that. So it's probably more important than ever that we're anchored. You know, whatever our faith might be Christian, but we can still be anchored, you know, in the cycles of the year, you know, and connected with nature that way. So what happens with, you know, pagans is that, you know, when pagans in the southern hemisphere, they just reverse everything. so Beltane becomes Samhain, winter solstice becomes summer solstice. So I just really wish that my ancestors had kind of thought the same way and thought, well, okay, you know, Christmas is best celebrated at the darkest point of the year. We'll turn everything around, and it would have just fit so well, really. And of course, what they did as well, they imposed all this, you know, not just on. This wasn't just something that happened with fellow settlers. This is imposed on the Maori people, who had their own traditions, and they have their own New Year, for example, which still isn't being formally celebrated and acknowledged on a national level. It's Matariki. So we're so out of kilter with nature, and nobody really ever talks about how the calendar is out of kilter with nature, and we forget what. So when we talk about the real reasons for things, you know, Christmas is, you know, it's going into the dark times. So you're sharing heat and sharing warmth and sharing humour and good company as you go into the dark times. That's very nature connected, you know. So it's not, you know, and when people talk about, when Christians say, you know, you're forgetting the true meaning of Christmas, what they're normally talking about is commercialization. They're railing against that, and you know, I'm right with them on that one. You know, it has become this horrible money fest, you know, this spend fest, and this expectation, you know, that's been kind of placed on people. Often, you know, people can have very low incomes, but if they've got children, their children are going to have this expectation that, you know, they want the same things as their peers for presents, and these kids' things, these toys, they're not cheap, you know. So we're slaves of that, you know, that commercial drive. We're kind of exploited, I think, to some degree with that. So I think, yeah, that's not the true meaning of Christmas. I think the true meaning of Christmas, I guess, if I have to put it in a nutshell, nutshell's quite appropriate because hazelnuts were traditionally, and chestnuts, isn't it? Traditionally consumed at Christmas. If I put it in a chestnut shell, it's about community and so it was a kind of mutual support, mutual encouragement. Taking comfort in each other, using the power of the community to offset the kind of the unpleasantness of going into that dark point, and knowing that dark point, although the light's returning, it's going to get bloody cold, and and when snows do occur around about February, that's when livestock can be killed, and people can be killed, and a difficult time to survive. So it's kind of like, let's gather ourselves in, let's kind of draw close for the real winter, which is about to come. Okay, so Christmas is not midwinter. I wish I could explain this a little bit better. There are people that have said explained and talked about this far better than me. And what you can do is look at things like Gerald Gardner and Ross Nichols. They were the people that kind of formulated the Wheel of the Year. So they're good sources to look into. Ronald Hutton, Professor Ronald Hutton, has written lots of books on seasonal things and cycles and stuff like that. That's all good stuff. So I'm not preaching any kind of one religion above the other. Some people kind of see this as kind of like a battleground between pagans and Christians. It's like, no, Christmas is ours, no, it was ours. I don't see it like that at all. I think it belongs to everybody, and we have a choice about what we make it, really. So for me, Christmas is not about going crazy and getting really busy and trying to do loads of stuff. For me, it's about kind of the basics. It's kind of food, drink warmth, fun, rest, and preparing yourself for what I think is is the most difficult time in the year, isn't it, in the West? I mean, certainly like January. What is it? Is a black? What do they call it? Black Monday or something like that? There's a day, Blue Monday, which is a very good New Order song. There's a particular date in January, isn't there, where they reckon that everybody is at their most miserable. Which is kind of so that's not long afterwards. So it's about kind of Christmas is the psychologically and societally, it's about preparing yourself for what is to come, I think. So that said, I hope I haven't spoiled your Christmas. I don't have a problem with Christmas being religious, and certainly Christmas carols, Christmas mass is fantastic. I love all that, and I love all the pagan stuff around Christmas as well, and I love the food and drink and the feasting of Christmas. What I don't like is the over commercialization of Christmas. I don't think anyone likes that, really, apart from the people that profit from it. So whatever the meaning of Christmas is for you, I hope you have a great one, great Yule, winter solstice, Saturnalia, whatever you might want to, Winterval, whatever you might want to call it. And let's not get precious about this. We're all different. We all follow different paths. So whatever floats your boat, just have a good one. And I'll add this to the series. I'll create a playlist. I don't know what we'll call it, but it'll be something along the lines of meaning of seasonal festivals or something like that. So that if you're interested in this kind of stuff, you can just click on the playlist and watch all these in a row. I suppose I have an emotional investment in this topic because personally I find, and maybe this is coming from the autistic spectrum, is when you're on the autistic spectrum, you're kind of like an outsider looking in, and you're kind of thinking, well, why? And why do we do this? And why do we do that then? And actually, the whole calendar just doesn't make sense, So come the revolution, I would look at redesigning the calendar so that it actually reflects, so it really keys us in with the reality of what's happening in nature, rather than a myth of what's happening in nature. So don't think of snow as a Christmassy thing, because it's not. Don't think of cuckoos as the beginning of spring, because they're at the end of spring. New Year's is at the wrong time of year. I'll do another video about that. All these things are kind of cockeyed, really. And I think the pagans, do probably have the best attitude to this and the best way of dealing with this. And I think it's actually, they're probably more mentally healthy for it, actually. So, thank you, Mario.